Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's weekly energy boost. I'm here this morning with David Ghiyam and David Strulowitz. Today, I am between the two Davids as we begin our fourth and final installment on the series about prosperity and abundance. The weekly energy boost is a 7-day spiritual energy forecast, and we do our best, whether it's just David and I or our lovely guests, we do our best to glean from the practical and powerful wisdom of Kabbalah to share with you the best practices and the most inspiring wisdom to navigate you through the next 7 days. But inevitably, those suggestions, that advice, carries us through our entire lives, and we share from both the wisdom and our experience and the experience of people that we've worked with. And that's one of the reasons we have a longtime student, David Strulowitz, with us this morning to share with us and to join in the conversation on how we can unlock that blessing of prosperity and abundance in our daily lives. We were talking in the car, and earlier we've been talking for weeks, obviously, and we've gotten lots of questions, lots of suggestions, lots of information and misinformation. And the truth is that David and David have much more experience in the world of business and finance than I do. So I think I'm just going to sit here and take notes.
People should know that David is a tax attorney, a wealth manager. And so if anybody wants...
And Kabbalah teacher.
And Kabbalah teacher, right. So if anybody wants free tax advice and save yourself the $750 an hour,
yeah, exactly,
throw your questions in the chat, and we'll be combining both these worlds, the spiritual and the physical world.
So where do we begin? You want to hear my opinion? my advice?
Go for it. I have questions, but I want you guys to warm it up. Get it going.
So for me, when I sit down with somebody who is talking about feeling blocked, feeling stuck, feeling challenged in the area of abundance and prosperity, I should actually digress first and say we covered topics ranging from, we started with mindset, really understanding that prosperity is not about dollars, how many zeros you have in your bank account. It's a state of mind. It's that feeling of being taken care of, that everything falls into place, that you don't need to worry because you know the light, the creator, universe, spirit, whatever you call it, is your partner, and you do your best and you let the light do the rest. We talked about saving time and money, that how we behave is really one of the most powerful forms of prayer. I think that was a tongue twister for me a few weeks ago as well. And that we can't talk one way and act another way. That's sort of a universal spiritual truth, but it's one that people avoid when it comes to work and money, because they may be go-getters in the office and guppies at home, or vice versa. And that we spoke last week especially about the idea that the camera never turns off, and neither can we. That desire, what our goals, whatever we're striving for, we don't get to turn that machine off whenever we want, if we really want it. And I heard somebody say something really brilliant, actually, that a person, I think it was David actually, who said it to me yesterday, that when you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you work. That's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week job. You don't stop working. And that doesn't resonate with people who aren't in that position, right? They want to come home. They want to forget about it. They may escape in different ways to forget about what's going on. And then they get back to the office the next morning and they wonder why things are not going the way they desire. So in today's show, we really want to bring all of these episodes, all previous episodes together, frost the cake, so to speak, and give our listeners not only understanding, but practical and tactical advice on how to expand their capacity for what we call prosperity and abundance.
So there's a lot of types of people we can address. So I want to pass it over to David. Maybe common mistakes people make, or things that they should be keeping in mind to either be on track to start to build wealth and abundance, whether they have it, how to keep it, how to enjoy it, or maybe they're more towards the end of the spectrum. And anything that you can share with us based on your experience dealing with all types of individuals. Let's just start there, and then we can continue.
Spiritual and not spiritual individuals.
Yeah.
That's the other.
I definitely
piece.
Want some non-spiritual advice as well.
So we'll address all those things, but I want to pick up on something that Elisheva just mentioned, and that's the idea that there's people that work 40-hour weeks. There's people that own their own business. I mean, we have all different examples, but I think it's important for people to take a step back and just look at time. I mean, there's time when whether it's in the business or working for somebody, our focus time, when we're doing the things that are most productive in our business. And then there's our free time, when we're doing things that just give us enjoyment or just give us fulfillment or make our lives meaningful. And then there's kind of the buffer time that kind of falls in between. It's really important, I find, among people that I meet that are successful and can manage all those things, that they time block those things. They time block their focus time. They time block when they're working on their business or thinking about their business. And also they time block their free time. Free time is incredibly important. And as I think I mentioned yesterday, there's different levels of free time. There's free time when it's just me doing what I want to do. And then there's a free time I have when I'm with other people, and perhaps it's their agenda. And so it's not really the same. It's not the things that give me the most fulfillment and enjoyment. And I have to strike that balance, because if I don't spend free time and recharge my batteries in the right way, when it comes to my focus time, my most important time, whether it's customer service, whether I'm a professional, doesn't matter. But if I don't have my free time, I can't really show up at the level that I really want to be or need to be in my focus time.
So basically, this is an interesting spiritual concept we've talked about in other shows, is the idea that, it's about I'm choosing the way my life should be, as opposed to, and it's going to sound cliche, but if you really think about it, we fall in this trap, that my schedule is controlling me, my emails are controlling me, my obsession with...
I'm a first responder in my own life.
Exactly. And it's interesting because one of the things that Kabbalist Rav Ashlag would share about looking inside yourself and seeing what you need to change, which is something we all need to do. But, and I took a survey of this in my last Kabbalah 1, I said, how many people are kind of beating themselves up too much, right? We look inside ourselves too much and we get upset with ourselves too much about this, that, and the other thing. So he said something very powerful. He said, when you choose or schedule, kind of what, like David's saying, to say, all right, for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to look inside myself and look at what I need to change and what's wrong with me. That's very powerful. But what happens is, throughout the day, randomly, you have intrusive thoughts, and the opponent schedules with you what's wrong with you. And you may be thinking about the same exact things that are wrong with you, but the difference is, one, you chose it, you scheduled it, you blocked off time for it. Therefore, the light of the Creator is part of it. And two, the other one is the opponent, that negative force, schedules it with you. And it sounds like, David, you're saying the same thing when it comes to the way you live your life and trying to put your business into it. You have to choose how you conduct those different parts of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. And I think, just to pick up on a point you mentioned, and I think we discussed this before, we don't want to attach negativity to these things. They're all positive. They all need to be done. But there are ways of looking at the things that go on in our life. So, a topic, and I know you've discussed this before, is procrastination. And sometimes, we look at the things we don't get done and we beat ourselves up. We know spiritually we're not beating ourselves up. We're giving the opponent the opportunity to do that. But we do beat ourselves up for procrastinating. I have one of my business mentors has a podcast he calls The Joy of Procrastination. And step one in looking at procrastination is to look at it in a completely different way. It's a shift in mindset about procrastination. Let's not attach negative. We all procrastinate. There isn't anybody in the face of the earth that isn't procrastinating. So why are we attaching negativity to that? Let's remove that negativity and instead look at the procrastination. It's telling us something about things going on in our lives.
Can you give an example?
Well, one of the things it might be telling us is, like, I keep putting off doing my tax return.
I'm sure nobody can relate to that.
maybe I shouldn't be doing my tax return. So as opposed to looking at my tax return as how am I getting this done, perhaps it should be who is getting this done? Who can I work with to assist me with this? So it's not a how issue, it's a who issue. And the who clearly isn't me in that example. And I'm a tax attorney and I'm not filing my own tax returns. I have a funny story about that. I was many years ago, I was working in New York, living in New Jersey, and my wife had been working in Illinois and had a job in Massachusetts. And I had to file 4 state income tax returns. I'm like, I'm never doing this again.
Well, what are other common things that people do to self-sabotage financially? I know I talk to a lot of students. Just what comes to my mind is people aren't really aware of what's going on in their finances. They don't really even look at their credit card bill, or they're afraid to. There's some kind of fear with understanding and taking control over finances.
Taking responsibility.
Exactly. And part of it has to do with, I don't really want to know. That's a category of people. And there's another category of people that are way too controlling about it. So I want to know if you can kind of hit on that from your experience, things people do to self-sabotage when it comes to their financial situation.
Well, I mean, there's certainly a wide range of things. I think that, and I mentioned this before, when it comes to what kind of progress we're making on whatever financial goals we have, if we look at it like, I want to be here, then I'm only here. Mm-hmm. We're focusing on gap. We're focusing on the void. We're focusing on what's missing. And I find what's really helpful is to get people to focus on, you may be here, but look where you were before. Look at the progress you've made and focus on what we've accomplished as a way of assisting us in moving forward. We all have goals. We all want to be someplace. We all want to move in some direction, but we also have to, in terms of how we measure success. I think it was Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. He said, be very careful about how you measure success. We want to measure success not in terms of the gap where we aren't. We want to measure it between where we are now and where we used to be. And if we don't do that, then we do sabotage ourselves because we don't want to think about our goals and we don't want to think about our direction because we associate a lot of negativity with that. And it's another place where people generally beat themselves up.
I love that because David reminded me of another concept that we've spoken about, which is lack attracts lack and abundance attracts abundance. We know that. We don't we don't gravitate towards people.
See episode number 1.
That's the first.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about. Yeah. No, I mean the first episode in this series. That's one of the things we spoke about.
People don't gravitate towards people who feel lack, and one of the jobs of our internal opponent is to always make us feel like something's wrong, or looking at life at what I missed or what I could have done, and having anxiety about it. And what David's basically saying is, while that's important to address, you need to connect to something good you've done to feel whole, because that's what's going to open up the next destiny, the next relationship, the next business idea. I know so many people who are always stuck because they just don't have that consciousness of abundance. They just don't attract abundance because they don't think that they themselves are abundant. And you have to find that fine balance of there's something I need to do, and I have everything I need simultaneously. You have to kind of look at both of those.
And also build on the successes. We overlook that a lot. We don't look at the progress we've made, and we're all guilty of it. I think it's really common, and I think it's one of those disempowering things that we get caught up in. If I could go a little further down the rabbit hole on that, just think about the things that we do in the course of our day. There's the things we don't like to do. There's the things that we're okay doing. There's the things we really like to do. And then there's I would say a fourth category, which one of my business mentors calls our unique abilities. And the goal would be to only be doing our unique abilities. What are our unique abilities? They're the things that we have a never-ending supply of energy to do. And we all have unique abilities. We're all different. No two snowflakes are alike. We all have different talents. We all have different abilities. We all have different things that we're passionate about. And the goal is to find those. especially in terms of what we do financially, what we do towards prosperity. Find the things that we could do forever. The things we don't like to do, let's not beat ourselves up about not doing them. Let's just not do them. Let's either find a workaround or find someone else to do them for us. And the same would go actually for the things that we like doing, the things we really like doing. We shouldn't be doing those either. The goal would be to be moving to spending our time only doing the things that fall within our unique abilities.
So tell me, how would you address a situation like this? Many times I have students who maybe they have a good job. It's paying the bills or supporting their family. And then they come to me and say, no, David, it's not my passion. What I'm really passionate about, what I know I'm really good at is, I don't know, playing guitar, something like this. So I'm listening and they say, look, I want to start a guitar business. I want to become a musician, whatever it is. And maybe this person, I don't know, is an attorney, or it happens a lot. And there's this moment where they want to let it all go and chase their passion or their dreams, which sounds great. And spiritually, by the way, it sounds like in line with everything we teach. However, there's a certain responsibility here financially. And I've had people follow their dreams and all of a sudden the wife is calling me and saying, you know, it's a marvelous, the guitar is the guitar is phenomenal. I love the music, but I couldn't pay my Amex this month. So can you get this guy out of the house here, please, and tell him to go back to work? So I'm sure you've dealt with situations like that. I'm curious to see what you would say about that.
I think I've dealt with that less in a professional setting and more in just personal setting. I think it's important for people to chase their passions, no question about it. But there's also a very practical and pragmatic side to it. So even the guy who really loves guitar, maybe the guitar isn't there to tell him that he should be playing guitar all the time. Maybe the guitar is there to tell him that he's not getting enough satisfaction in the work he's doing.
I like that's deep. That's deep. So
I mean, you know, from a spiritual perspective, everything that's happening to us is there for a reason. We're getting messages all the time. Part of it is like, do we understand what that message is? And maybe, you know, sometimes we have to take a step back and say there's something deeper going on here.
Elisheva, what about you? What with the students that you deal with, what are the common challenges they have when it comes to abundance and wealth generation?
Well, I spoke to somebody recently, and actually I see it in the comments here. I'm wondering if we can address it as well. Is there are a lot of people out there that have addictions or compulsions around money, whether it's spending, compulsive spending, shopping addiction. You know, that there are certain, it might not even be related to money, but they have a habit that is expensive that puts them in a position. I mean, honestly, I can tell you a dear student of mine had a very lucrative job, but her expenses with 2 kids in college and a mortgage and all the other things that come with it was basically living month to month. So it goes back to the first responder thing, right? That there's external situations, objects, people that are draining the bucket, let's say. But in a way, those people, and this is where my question is, they feel they're helpless. They cannot stop it. They cannot help it. They can't
stop what?
They can't take their kids out of college because it's hurting their lifestyle. They don't know how to stop the shopping addiction. They don't know how to stop the subscriptions to all the things. There's a feeling of weakness in the face of finance, in the facing my finances, right? Like the people that don't want to look at their credit cards. How do you help someone who feels like they're at the mercy of their lifestyle? That's a big one, by the way.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, actually, a close student of mine kind of came out of the closet with, his monthly expenses are $20,000 a month. And he doesn't sleep at night because he doesn't know where to pull the money from for next month.
I mean, I think we need to draw the distinction between addictions and other type of, because that's a special category.
Okay.
Which we can talk about. because, you know, when it comes to the addiction, we know that from a spiritual perspective, that addiction, let's say that shopping addiction, is not so much, it is a shopping addiction, but it's we're all chasing positivity. We're all chasing types of energy. We're all chasing fulfillment. We're all chasing, we want these things. And so for addictions, it's just they're seeing it coming from a specific area. And we have to understand that it's not the things that we're buying that are making us feel that way. They do make us feel that way. We want sustainable things to make us feel good. And the shopping is constantly feeding something that's not really sustainable. It's always got to be fed. And it's a, you know, when we identify it's an addiction, it's time to take a step back also and look at other more sustainable ways we can get the feelings that we're looking for, address the things that are missing in our life, perhaps, or just there's just maybe not enough meaning and less purpose in the other things we do. So that's a different category. When it comes to actual living expenses, we can make the distinction between short-term expenses and, let's say, long-term expenses. You know, college is 4 years. So for someone who's
times how many kids you have.
Down,
yeah, 4 years. For Elisheva, it's 46 years if you multiply the amount of kids she has.
For sure. So, but let's say, but it you know, in theory, it stops at some point.
Right.
And it's important to know when it starts and when it stops. And yes, with multiple children, it extends itself. But what I find a lot of times is parents assume that responsibility because they want to, but there's a reality that they can't afford to. And to a certain degree, by not letting their children participate in that cost, they're doing their children a huge disservice. So what I find a lot of people do is they find ways to get their children to participate in that cost. And it might be loans, college loans. It might be, you know, children working during school, working during summer hours, doing things to offset that cost. And it's an important life lesson for the child to participate. I had experience with a client many years ago who was making a job change and his income was going to be changing big time. And he said to me, "Can I afford to do this?" And I'm like, "I think you can afford to do this, but you're going to have to make sacrifices." And he said, "Well, I can make sacrifices, no problem." I said, "Okay, well, one of the sacrifices is you've saved maybe 50% of what you need to cover college costs. So you may have to take out loans for the college expenses." He said, "I don't want to take out loans." I said, "Well, that's what I mean by compromise."
I thought about this many times with my kid's 3. One of my kids is 3, and he always wants stuff. He wants this, he wants that. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm writing all this down, and I would like to show him the ledger, you know, maybe when he's 6 or 7 years old. Again, I'm contemplating this. I haven't been a parent of a child older than 3.5, so it's all in theory, but I can do the case study and let you know how it goes. I'm curious to see how Elisheva deals with it. But I want my kids, because I teach this concept of bread of shame, we teach bread of shame in our classes. Bread of shame is this whole idea of when you give something to someone that they haven't earned, they not only don't appreciate it, but they resent the person who gave it to them. And this is the whole concept of how creation was created, that the Creator created the souls of humanity, and instead of imparting to us everything, like, why aren't we born with our soulmate? Why do we got to go through this lengthy process of finding our soulmate? Why don't we just all born with wealth and have it equally distributed in a way? Because we're born into darkness so that we go through a spiritual and physical process of earning it. And hence we remove what's called the bread of shame. So children also innately are born with this bread of shame because they receive everything for free from the parents. It's very much a mirror of the process of creation. And as parents, our job is to be involved, but not be involved exactly in that perfect amount to help them feel that they're earning every aspect of their life. And for me, I think it's a very powerful thing, because I think and I've seen this with parents, a lot of times parents are ignoring that responsibility of how do I make my child feel that they are a co-creator in everything that they receive. You don't have to punish them. You don't have to make them work like long hours. They have to feel a co-creator in everything that they receive.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
I'll tell you, the funniest moments of my life are when my kids come to me and say, "Ma, you owe me $20."
They say it to you?
Yeah, yeah. I come to them and I say, "Well, according to my records, you owe me 300,720." Well, there's no such thing as your mom owes you money, by the way. But I think that you bring up an important point, and it'll segue great into the thing I want to ask David Strulowitz next. One of the things we emphasize when we teach this concept in classes is that it's not tit for tat. It's the effort is relative to the person. Right. So, many times I'll teach this concept and a person will say, well, I work night and day and right. I never even see my kids. And but that kind of effort is probably in that person's comfort zone. And the real spiritual effort, the real earning is in, leaving at 5 and coming home and being present with the family, even though it might not be putting money in the pocket. It puts the person in a state of being the creator on a higher level. One of the things that I remember distinctly, in maybe about 5-6 years ago, having a conversation with my teacher, is there was the whole housing bubble, mm-hmm. right, that happened a while back, and we were talking about spiritually, on a spiritual level, why did it happen? Mm-hmm. What you said before, David, reminded me of it, and Karen Berg was saying, look, a lot of people got a lot more than they could handle. Mm-hmm. And eventually that couldn't, it may have worked for a year, 2 years, 3 years. They got what they wanted, but in the long term, it wasn't going to serve them because of that spiritual principle. So David Strulowitz, I wanted to hear from you. How do you guide people out of debt? Because that spiritual, we talked the last few weeks about how money is energy. It's a currency, it's a currency, but money and time and energy are basically all the same energy, but manifest in a different way, in a different measurement. We measure it differently. When people come to you with debt or afraid to accrue debt, what kind of advice do you give them?
Well, there's a very wide spectrum. People feel differently about that. I remember early in my career, one of my clients said to me, and he had a successful business, he said, my number one goal is to pay off my home mortgage. And I'm thinking, you're making a lot more money right? on your money. Yeah. Why would you, this is going on my head. I was shaking my head. I was trying to understand. And this has played out several times with people I've worked with. The reason why he wanted to pay off his debt is because he knew that his business was volatile. And he knew that, 80% of his business was coming from one client. And if he lost that one client, he'd have to work to regain business. And he didn't want to risk losing his house. So for him, having his house fully paid off meant that he could be home and not have to worry about losing his house when business got volatile. So that's one extreme. And I think it's really instructive. And everybody feels differently. Some people sleep better at night knowing that their house is totally paid off. Debt is one of those things that, people want to ignore. It's like the 800-pound gorilla in the room. You can't ignore that. It's not going away. And interest rates on credit card debt, you buy something on sale, it's 25% off, but you pay for it with a credit card that's charging you 25% a year, and you're not paying that off in 1 year anyhow. So what was the benefit? And this goes to just developing a consciousness, which a lot of people do have, which is that I only really want to spend what I have. The credit card is a short-term tool to assist me to pay for something until I can pay it off. And so the people who are the most productive in the use of credit, they pay their bill off every month. They don't look at it as like I'm financing my lifestyle. They just look at it as a convenient way to purchase, and then they pay it off. So if we're spending more than we're making, that's a recipe for disaster.
Everyone has a different risk profile. I know personally, this is not a spiritual thing, I'm just saying a physical thing. Personally, I tried everything in my life has a 3 degrees away from disaster. So there's 1 degree. 1 degree would be that you're leveraged so much where if that check didn't come or someone screwed something up, you'd be in a really bad spot. 3 degrees for me is that 3 things would need to happen at the same time for me to be in a really, really bad spot. And I personally like to do analysis on my own life and say, where am I 1 degree away? And that's where I put my focus. How do I get it out of 1 degree, move it to 2, move it to 3? Another way of looking at it is, just like David said, if you have a very risky type of business where anything can happen, I think I do.
Hasn't this year shown us that we're all in that
We're
boat?
all in that boat, but
not everybody. There are businesses that have fared very well this year.
Yeah, most people actually I know have actually done better because of COVID than not. But of course, there are a lot of people who have not.
There's a lot of people. Yeah, there's a lot of pain and suffering.
It's a wide spectrum, and it's actually creating this severe divide. But the point is, the people who are doing well, it's not just because they're selling PPE products or whatever it is. One of the reasons why they're doing well is because they pivoted quickly. So they had maybe something that was not conducive to COVID times, but they pivoted very quickly. They didn't go into victim consciousness. I saw that process unfold. Or they weren't 1 degree away from disaster. So an example is, if you have a volatile business, one of the concepts is, do you have 6 months worth of cash flow to be able to pay your your employees, or pay whatever you need to pay your expenses? And most people do not. Most people leverage in order to achieve that scalability, because they just don't think it won't happen to me, and they're 1 degree away from disaster. So that's one thing I would tell everybody is, are you 1 degree away from a negative situation occurring in your life? And the other thing I wanted to say is something really powerful, dealing with a lot of people I know are looking forward towards, that extra house, that second mortgage, that aspiration that they have of what it's going to be like to generate wealth. And I'll tell you, from speaking to people who have some level of wealth and comfort, that the more they accumulated, especially that second mortgage, it's a very famous thing. As soon as they got that vacation home, or what's the expression about the boat, about the yacht, right?
The 2 happiest days in a boat owner's life.
Yeah. It's the day
he buys it, and the day he sells it.
Exactly. And you should know, and it is a Kabbalistic concept, that as soon as you add something to your life, along comes with it a certain level of negativity that also needs to be transformed, which isn't a bad thing. But you cannot think that by adding something physical into your life, be it a home, be it even a relationship. People say, well, once I get this relationship, my life will be better. The answer is yes and no. The no is, you must know that a certain level of desire to receive, which has negativity attached to it, comes with every physical object in this world. So as soon as you obtain a new physical object, you also obtain a new level of negativity that is now your responsibility to correct, which isn't a bad thing. But you have to know that's where the idea of more physicality, more problems comes from. You're assuming the tikkun of this new home. The correction, right? Tikkun is correction. You're assuming a child will also bring a lot of joy into your life, but you're also assuming the correction and the negativity that comes with the child as well. I was speaking to a student of mine, and he said, why can't these great Kabbalists just go on CNN, perform these miracles, and all of a sudden show the world, right? Why can't I just have this like superpower, be shown the miracles or whatever it is? And people think that if they saw a Kabbalist performing a miracle, like resurrecting the dead, all of a sudden everybody would be like, okay, I want to be spiritual. I now have the strength to be spiritual, and that's the end of it. The truth is, whether you saw Moses and Jesus and Muhammad walking and holding hands, and they said, we're going to show you the greatest miracles of being spiritual, you still would have as difficult of a life as you had the day before as you will the day after. And it will still be hard for you to break your fears. And it will still be hard for you to go home and deal with your sucky relationship. And it'll still be hard for you to parent in the way you should be parenting. Because even if somebody inspires you, along with that comes the negativity that you also need to cleanse. So I really want to hammer this home, that there's no such thing as I got some kind of pleasurable object or situation or inspiration for free. It always comes with its equivalent negativity that you have to correct.
I feel uplifted.
Even with abundance, I think we know, even with abundance, it's not, your happiness isn't coming from abundance. Yes, it's nice. We're not going to dismiss that, but happiness is coming from other places.
Well, when I interact or come across someone who wants to change their tikkun, change their correction around abundance, prosperity, one of the most important things that comes up, and I'm sure you guys will have something to say about it, is sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Kabbalists teach that in order for me to receive more, the best strategy is to think about how much more I want to share and increase my desire to give. Therefore, the universe sees, okay, she really wants to give. The only way she can give is if she has more, and situations will come into my life to give me the opportunity to give more. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean money that I won't. It can be basically anything, any blessing. I mean, it happened to me once. It's a very sort of mundane example, but I won a parenting package of all kinds of toys and goodies and things like that for a child not my age. I mean, obviously not my age, not my children's age. Like, I had no use for I won some raffle. So to me, that's an example. Of course, as a Kabbalah teacher, I'm always thinking about new ways to share, other people to share. How can I influence and affect more change in the world? And it happened to be I won this raffle, and I was able to give these goodies to friends of mine who had the appropriate age kids. My point in that example, again, it's very mundane, but the point is that if you put it on your radar,
Mm-hmm.
if that becomes a lot, I'm sure David Strulowitz can tell us, people have financial goals to pay off the mortgage and all those things. But if one of our top goals is, I want to be able to share more, you'll find that the universe supports you to do that sharing. Again, it might not come in, I get to write a check for $100,000 at the end of the year, but it can come in other forms. And the paradox is that when we're in a state of lack, when we don't have as much as we want, the tendency is to hold on to what we have rather than to feel we are able to give. And maybe, David, you can share with us, how do you navigate that terrain with people, especially your own students, right? You want to inspire them and even in yourself be able to give more. What do you do when you come across somebody who's having those same challenges?
It's a great question. And in terms of my process, when I work with people, even on an initial meeting, I'll just say to them, tell me what's on your mind. And I'll elicit from them the things that are on their mind. Then I'll say, well, let's say that we know that college is paid off. And let's say that we know that you're on track for retirement. And let's say that we know that you have enough money set aside if you have to help your parents. And we'll get all those things out. And then I'll say to them, what is then important to you? And everyone then turns. They're almost like wired for it. They turn to thinking about where they want to give back. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important part of the conversation, because I always want to make sure that I'm in touch with what is important to them. And not only those goals, but also where they want to give back. And so, this is where tithing comes up for a lot of people. They look at their income, they want to tithe, they want to set aside, and they want to make sure that, they are recognizing in what prosperity they receive that, they have a partner. The Creator's their partner in everything they do. And so I do work with clients a lot in strategies for how we fund those things that are important to them. And of course, there's a lot of there's tax benefits to doing that also, which I get involved with also.
Just to add color to what David just said, that tithing, an accepted principle that is biblical in source, accepted principle amongst religions and spiritual practices, which the Kabbalists are adhering to, is this idea that Creator gives each person 10% to 20% more than actually they've spiritually earned, to give them the free will and the ability to impart that. So that's 10% after your taxes that you receive into your private domain, to be able to be charitable with, in order to enhance, to be a creator, to add the light of the Creator to this world. And as you do that, you go from being a swamp to a river. You become a channel. And that's the idea. It's a spiritual practice of building wealth as well. So to add color a little bit of what David was saying. I also wanted to add to that this idea that oh gosh, it just slipped my mind. Oh, I was going to say something based on what David just said and it slipped my mind. Gonna have to come back to me. Let it come. If you guys want to add something right now.
Well, I have the question personally and professionally. I mean, I don't know the professional perspective on it, but one of the things that I have always made an effort to do, secondary definitely to my sharing, is saving. I have always, and that's also spiritual advice I've given to people as well when we talk about the idea of tithing, is that you can give 10%, right? And as David Strulowitz said, in a way, it's like paying off my partner. I got to give 10%, their 10% cut to the creator. And then I put aside that 10%, the other 10%, because David Ghiyam was saying it's 10 to 20%. I take the other 10% and I put it aside, not from a place of fear. There's a lot of people that have rainy day funds because they're worried something is going to happen. For me, it's more of a way to have that expansive ability that one day when I do want something that maybe is beyond my, like you said, the 6-month savings, right? If you have those 6 months, not that I'm doing it because I'm worried that something disastrous is going to happen, but maybe I want something that's a bit beyond my means at some point, or I want to share in a way that's more than I can do on a day-to-day basis. I have that ability. David, what kind of advice do you give people in terms of saving?
Start early.
There you go. Yes. By the way, that's something that I did for my kids very early on as they started putting money away.
When you look at college costs as an example, I mean, they're huge. And so it's not a matter of looking at, this huge mountain I have to climb. It's a matter of one step at a time. We have an expression. I mean, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So when it comes to these big goals, it's just a matter of, start early and just create a habit of saving. And I think it's great that you have that habit of saving. And, and start small. Start with 50 a month. Start with 100 a month. Start with 25 a month. Just get into the habit of setting aside money away for the things that you're going to need long term. You may not be able to fully fund the goal for college, but whatever you can fund is going to be a huge assistance to your children. You may not be able to fully fund for retirement right now, but your ability to fund may increase as time goes on. But it's important to start to form those habits. It's like anything that we do, we're like building neural pathways. When we change our mindset, when we change our habits, when we establish ways of showing up and practices in our life. Start small. Just, it's sometimes more important to just embark on the journey than worry about how I'm going to solve it. We just need to take those steps.
I remember now what I wanted to share on the heels of what David said, that one of the reasons a person has wealth for really two reasons. Number one, for whatever reason in their destiny, their spiritual process begins, or at least ends up, on a path where they have abundance, because the negativity and the challenges that people go through with abundance, oftentimes, for sure, they're different than those who don't have it, but sometimes they're also more extreme. And in the same way, we all have a correction that we need to do as a single person. When someone asks me, oh, when am I going to find my soulmate? I said, when you're done correcting everything you need to do as a single person, because we can't skip that step. Once you correct, once you finish everything as a single person, then the creator, the universe will just thrust you into a relationship, because now you have to work on the corrections you have as a person who's in a relationship. And that's why a lot of times people who are married are often nostalgic and wondering, when can I do this? When can I just travel? When can I just be with my friends? Well, never. You decided to be in a relationship. You had that time, right, to do all that, and you didn't correct certain things, and that's why you're nostalgic to go back to being single, because there's certain things that you didn't correct. And the same thing with poverty and debt. And I know I've been through it. It's crazy, so painful. And you just want it to be over with. Like, how do I get out of debt? How do I fix this issue of not having enough or whatever? And I remember going through this with spiritual background, telling myself, you know what? I don't want to get out of that. I don't want to get out of it. Of course I do, but I don't want to get out of it
to get it over with.
To get it over with. You can never try to get something over with. You have to take in the lesson, take in the power of it, find what got you there in the first place, realize that part of going to the next level is not just how hard you work in the physical world, but spiritually there are certain fears that need to be broken, there are certain things that need to be healed, and they may have nothing to do with finances. It may be that you still think life's unfair because somebody cheated on you in a relationship 6 years ago, and that's what's blocking your financial situation. How are they connected? Well, spiritually, of course, they're connected. So you don't want the painful situation to go away. And if you have college debt, if you have debt that you assume from somebody else, or any kind of financial hardship, or somebody took money from you, a business partner cheated you, you have to know the Creator sent those people. This is all from the Creator. This is not people hurting you. This is all pre-written, pre-staged to help you correct whatever you need to correct. And once you do, then it's like the whole world pushes you into your next level. You don't even have to fight for it. You don't even have to try to figure out what it is. You get pushed there. And so that's what I wanted to say. I thought that was a really important thing to add.
I think, just to build on that, I think what stands in the way of people taking that next step is this inability to be vulnerable about it. This inability to acknowledge where my vulnerabilities lie. And, vulnerability isn't a bad thing, it's a gift. We have these social, norms of let's not be vulnerable. But we know in every situation where we show up and we're open and we're honest and we're vulnerable, that's like the first step in addressing things and in moving on and moving on a positive trajectory from that point forward. I had a quote I wanted to share when I thought about this. Success hastens to those who are engaged in authenticity. We want to show up as who we are, with our limitations, with our debt, with our spending patterns. We want to show up with all that stuff, and we have to own it. We have to acknowledge it. We can't begin to be who we are without being authentic about it, and then addressing the things that need to be addressed. And again, one step at a time.
Something I was very fascinated by, the more successful a person is, like imagine, especially the ones who get to like the billionaire status, the more plain their clothes are. I always found that to be interesting. I remember being in the airport and was in line with somebody in customs, and they were talking to us, my wife and I were talking to them. And then I said, well, what do you do for a living? And he's like, we wear plain clothes. And he's like, I import. That's like always says, I import, something like that. And I thought to myself, this person is very successful. Because someone who's not successful would tell me their whole LinkedIn profile, how they're like 8 different consultants, their degrees, their what they do, their agencies. He
imports drugs is what he was trying to hide from you.
Doesn't matter. The fact that he was so simple and authentic to just who he wanted to be, and he dressed like somebody, just like, nothing special. It's we overcompensate. What's that expression? I think it might be an Israeli expression. What is it? A can with few coins makes a lot of noise. Something like this. Have you heard this before? And we overcompensate, and we're not authentic, and we're not in touch with where we're at. And the Creator always wants us to accept where we're at, take responsibility for it. And I remember, Elisheva, in the beginning of the show, I wanted to cut in, but I restricted. When your child comes to you and says, Mom, I owe you you owe me $20, and you say, oh, well, you owe me 300,000, something like that. It reminds me of a lesson that we learned. I taught this in Kabbalah too before, that every time a person says, oh, that's not fair about life, whenever you use the word fair, the angels in the upper world, the Creator says, oh, you want fair. Well, let me pull up the sheet of what you owe and how much we've been financing your life. And you're on credit. And that's why as soon as a person says that's not fair for whatever reason, immediately their life starts to go into a more chaotic situation, because as soon as you request fair is always going to be not in your favor. So you don't want fair. You want mercy. It just came into my mind.
I needed that, and I'm going to send that to every one of my children to hear from your mouth and not mine, because that is the number one phrase spoken in my household. David Strulowitz, thank you so much for joining us and for all of your gems. Of course, this is a show that needs to be listened to probably 3-4 times. Really, people sometimes send me messages, oh, I listened to the show twice already. I tell them I listened to it 3 times. That there was so much in today's episode, and I want to thank you for taking time and sharing with us. And we would love to have you again if you are so inclined.
It's my pleasure. I'd love to be back.
We want to thank all of you guys for listening and sharing. You can continue to comment and ask your questions. We'll go over the chat during the week. You can also email us at energyboost@kabbalah.com. The next series we are embarking on next week is all about relationships. So I also want to invite you to send us your questions about relationships. We have 4 episodes to cover on that front. We are moving into one of the most powerful times Kabbalistically on the calendar this week. The Week of Miracles begins this Thursday night, the artist formerly known as Hanukkah. So we want to encourage everyone to get online and learn about the power of those 8 days that are coming towards us. That's one of the reasons we brought this concept of abundance and prosperity into this month, is because it is very much linked to the energy of Hanukkah. So we hope everybody will have the opportunity to connect. I want to wish you a fabulous week, and we'll see you next time on the Weekly Energy Boost.